huge strides, and we are seeing the benefits of that leadership and the commitment. So we're seeing decreased number of new infections in babies. We're seeing increasing numbers of people accessing treatment, staying on treatment, and a massive expansion of the places where people can receive treatment. We're also seeing possible signs that new infections in young people may be declining, and I think that's the area now where we need to focus our efforts. And of course, in order to make progress there, this is going to take efforts way beyond those of the Department of Health. We need communities, we need schools, we need all of the other departments to make sure that young people are going to be having access to knowledge, skills, and the services they need to remain HIV negative.
There's been a real paradigm shift in the way the department has seen it, the way it needs to respond to the South Africans, and so it's put in place mechanisms to simplify, to be much more efficient, much more effective. I think it was starting on a place where there were lots of challenges, and I think those challenges still remain. For instance, good basic programs are being scaled up. The HCT campaign was a real starter. It's been the entry point for a lot of action to be taken forward. Linked to that is the male medical circumcision program, and of course the scale up of antiretroviral therapy and scaling up the response to TB. So there's some very good basic programs that are in place which we recommend as UNAIDS because they're good returns on investment. I think there's still some challenges related to some of the enablers that make programs work, particularly around the reduction of stigma and discrimination, the issues around looking at gender-based violence. Because in as much as you may put drugs out there, in as much as you might do HIV testing, without sort of addressing the issues that stop people going to the clinics in the first place, maybe the healthcare workers are not friendly, maybe the police are arresting the sex workers who go for the clinics to get condoms, then your programs will fail. So I think those are the remaining challenges, but that cannot be done by the Department of Health alone. And so they need to reach out much more to all the other departments, the police, education, social development, because it's everybody's business.
UNICEF and UNAIDS, they're making some comments, their overall assessment of our programs here in South Africa, where it's working, but also where there's challenges do remain. I want us to start, Minister, with those positives, the things we are doing right. Let's just go through a few of those.
Well, let's start with World AIDS Day, the 1st of December 2009, when the President shared the platform with the Executive Director of UNAIDS, Michel Sidibe, in Pretoria, where he announced 4 far-reaching programs to try and turn the tide around, which was followed by the launch of the massive HCT campaign, that people must know their status so that they should know how to behave. Remember, we're targeting 15 million South Africans, and in 1 year, in 18 months, we ended up meeting 20 million. That in itself did reduce stigma. But we then said, having that program means you are going to find people who are positive, who need treatment and care. So we need to expand. Just to give you a few figures, in February 2010, because the President announced it in December 2009, we prepared and started in the new financial year in April 2010. And as we were preparing, in February 2010, we found that the facilities, clinics and hospitals which were providing ARVs were only 490. Today we have expanded them to 3,000. That's how big we have gone. The nurses who were certified and trained to initiate treatment without having to wait for a doctor first, what you call NIMAR, nurse-initiated ART treatment. There were only 250 nurses. And with the shortage of doctors, you can imagine. But today, as I'm speaking, we've trained and certified 10,000 nurses who are now doing the work up there. And as you know, before the HCT campaign, South Africans who used to test per annum to know their status were only 2 million. Today, I've given you the figures. We also scaled up the mother-to-child transmission. As you know, in 2008, it was 8%. It went down by more than half to 3.5% in 2010. And then again, went down in 2011 to 2.7%, because we're doing this on a massive scale. But also remember, one of the announcements done in December by the president was that we must start treatment for mother-child transmission at 14 weeks rather than 28 weeks. So those are the changes that sort of took place. But also with the South African National AIDS Council, both National Association of People Living with HIV and AIDS, TAC, etc., we came together because, remember, previously we spent a lot of time speaking.
Fighting.
Yes, fighting and speaking against one another. But we then said, look, let's sit down and talk, guys. And we started finding each other and moving forward.
Okay, so, Christella, every week you sit with people from government, professionals, people living with AIDS, workers who are assisting people to cope. Just from what the minister is saying, the good that we've done, what have you also been able to pick up, the things that we're doing right?
What I've picked up is that the environment is enabling for people to get to know their status and talk about it. We've moved from 90% of callers being anonymous to people having names as we take calls, and to people sharing on platforms like Facebook and Twitter without fearing that, my name is there. What if my friends get to see this? And people openly asking questions where they are confused, where they want clarity. So I can say that through campaigns, the environment has created an enabling environment for people to just want to know their status. And also, I think it's commendable that scientifically, I know that we're now focusing only on the positives. Gone are the days where people would take up to 30 tablets a day. Now it's gone to a tablet a day, and that will encourage sustenance for people who are on medication to take their medication as required by doctors, and religiously so, to prevent issues like reinfection and also resistance, because as you know that if you skip your medication or even stop taking it because you're experiencing challenges, you might have resistance. And that for me are the things that I've picked up as positives, but there's a lot of improvement, and I hope we'll talk about that as well.
But that, of course, does not mean that we've done away with stigma and
Absolutely
denial.
not. That's why my response was purely from your question, that what have we done well, what we haven't even begun to do. Number one, we still talk about HIV and AIDS as the same thing, yet we don't say hypertension, stroke. We have an opportunity to prevent HIV from being AIDS as well, because it's costly to manage AIDS in any country. And it's much cheaper that the 5 million that we already have maintain the HIV status, teach them how to live well. And that message is missing in all our messages. We're focusing so much, and Minister has mentioned this on my show previously, that we're such a curative state, and this is worrying. We need to push the message of prevention, and prevention does not only stop from preventing people from being HIV positive, but it also prevents them from getting to an AIDS stage. And the fact that we don't really quite articulate what is meant by AIDS, because many of the diseases that we associate with AIDS are curable and treatable. But because we term this 30 collective of illnesses as AIDS, people don't seek help. There's still that fear. And also we haven't dealt with self-stigma, that a lot of people are scared of seeking help because of how HIV was introduced. You heard from the clip that I was scared that people will think that I'm promiscuous. It's still a highly sexualized condition. When do we get to a point where it's a human immune deficiency causing virus? We teach people what an immune system is, and we teach them how to take care of themselves. We're focusing so much on sex, who's sleeping with who, and when the condoms are going to be used, but we don't focus on what the actual virus does to the body and empower the individual to make decisions, informed decisions, to prevent themselves from being sick.
Kululeko, I see you're nodding all the time.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I think as the country we have managed to do sort of properly is to create a space for the NGOs, particularly the CPOs, who are actually the foot soldiers in terms of social mobilization, to partner with government in terms of these campaigns. For instance, the HCT campaign is one of the clear examples of where there is a strong partnership that we are able to, to have a good result. Also, what has happened is that initially you had the heroes of the struggle against HIV and AIDS being at a centralized level. Now, what you are finding is that at the local levels, you have people that could be identified as champions of HIV at that level. The other issue is that there was a point where people could not identify with people that are leading the struggle. It could be because of a rural-urban divide, because of race divide, and so on, and class as well. But now people are able to identify with people at the grassroots level. That's why they are able to join the struggle. But one of the challenges that we're currently facing within the NGO sector is that the government has a responsibility to assist NGOs to build the capacity so that they can be able to absorb the campaigns that the government is launching, because it's no use for government to launch good campaigns, but those campaigns can only be implemented or can only be run by government only, because you need the civil society. What is happening in this country is that you've got these international organizations they've got good technical skills, but then they don't have the proper social orientation on the ground. But now you find that the local organizations, because they are not capacitated, they don't have enough resources, and then you find that, that gap. And there are campaigns and programs that were started by these international donors and organizations. 5 years down the line, the donor pulls up the money, and then the program collapses because the local capacity has not been built. So if government can start to focus on that, I think we'll go even much better.
Okay, if you've just joined us, you're watching a live discussion about how we as South Africans are dealing with the HIV and AIDS pandemic. It's time to take another short ad break. Sunday Live continues right after this.
Young people and their parents came together in Khayelitsha, joining hands under the theme, Knowledge is Life. They're involved in a disclosure program that brings HIV-positive children together to help them deal with the stigma attached to the virus.
I'm living with HIV/AIDS. I started taking ARVs when I was 8. When I joined ZipZap, it really helped me because I saw other children there and I realized I was not the only one with this virus.
I told Musa about his status when he was 7. I remember he was playing with his car in the room, and I told him we were both living with the virus.
This is Sunday Live, your premier discussion forum on South African television. Tonight, we're discussing HIV and AIDS. How can we work together to fight this epidemic? You saw there one of the stories of people who were doing something yesterday to raise awareness, but also to celebrate some of the achievements that we've made as a nation in fighting HIV. Now, Minister, you heard Nkululeko there talking about how perhaps one of the things that we should be looking at is capacitating NGOs to make sure that on the ground we are actually very strong. We have ambassadors, foot soldiers, people who can actually help us turn around. How much of a focus or of a priority is that for government at the moment?
It is a big priority, a very big one. But you know, moving society is a huge undertaking. It might look very small. It might be very slow, but eventually when it happens, there's got huge gains. Let's look at our 10-point program in health. Firstly, we spoke about providing strategic leadership, but creating a social compact with society, meaning that we're aware as a Department of Health, nowhere can we do it alone. We need a social compact with society. But you also have number 8 that says mass mobilization for better health outcomes. You need to mobilize society on a huge scale. That is why this year, SANAC took a turn when we wanted to launch the new National Strategic Plan of changing the structure of SANAC, that it must be strong right from up to the ward level, then district level, then provincial level, then national level. This, before that, as we're speaking at the moment, because we have not yet implemented, we just agreed. SANAC is alive and kicking at the national level, where 19 sectors meet. In some provinces, like KZN, it's alive right up to the bottom, and that's why we keep on saying, let's use the KZN model, which moves everybody. If you visit KZN, you find the Provincial AIDS Council sitting, chaired by the Premier. You find almost everybody there, the district mayors, the local mayors, the ward councillors, different political parties, religious leaders. You know, when the mayor start presenting, the mayor of a district start presenting about the HIV/AIDS statistics, maternal mortality, child mortality, medical male circumcision, community gardens. You know, it's everything. I remember one of our MECs, because we took them there to see, he said, are these executive mayors here medically trained? Because they were not speaking about politics only, they were speaking about these very important issues.
Why then, Minister, are we not replicating this?
We took a decision to replicate it, yes. We took a decision to replicate it. That's why the Deputy President of the country, Rekhalema Motlandi, being the chairperson of SANAC, took all the MECs there to see. We actually invited the premiers, but they couldn't make it, to see, because we want them all to replicate it. If we don't do that on a massive scale where everybody to come together, for instance, some of the issues that Griselda was mentioning, they do them at that level. They even have journalists, radio stations there, where, I mean, in one of the events I saw the manager of Ukozi SM was there, and they were telling him that, look, from now onwards, this is what you did over your radio, this is how it affects us, this is what you advertise, this is how it destroys society, and this is what you need to avoid, etc., etc. So everybody understands their role. They even have Amakosi there. If anybody sells any wrong remedy, which he promises people, because sometimes people get disparate, they take everything. If anybody is propagating a remedy there that is not good for people, they know immediately, it is discussed at that level, and they dissuade that person from doing so. So without a massive, moving people on a massive scale, it won't work. You are aware that in October, the president launched the school health program. We put up what must happen at school. Unfortunately, and I must state this publicly, because it disappointed me, some of the media took it as sort of some joke about condom distributing at schools. Of everything, they chose this issue of condoms and started a big debate about it, when that was not even going to happen in the manner, by the way, that they were describing in some of the papers. But if you look at the program, it's a comprehensive school program to test, to let the kids have their eyes tested, their hearing, their oral hygiene, check their immunization status, put up some lessons about drugs and alcohol at schools, which me and you never needed, but kids need that these days. It's there. Then the issue of HIV counseling and testing, and the issue of reproductive health and rights, where you start by making them be aware of their bodies, what's going to happen, what are the alternatives, etc. Including contraception. They need to know about it and the choices. But we start putting big debates about that and obstacles when really we are faced with such a big problem.
Nkululeko, even if it was just about, I wouldn't want I don't think the minister should be apologetic about, even if it was just about HIV and AIDS. I mean, why is our NGO sector, perhaps this is one of the areas that our NGO sector should be looking at. I mean, going right down to those school governing bodies, a lot of whom remain conservative, was the fact of the matter is that we're dealing with something that is so powerful and that is being driven underground, among other things, by the attitudes of these adults who don't want this education to actually reach their kids, who don't want, distribution of condoms. Why should people be so conservative about that when in fact they do not? They do not have any better ways of making sure that their children are protected.
No, I think it's about constant education, and that's where NGOs and CPOs play a very strategic and important role. Because if you engage communities through social dialogues, for instance, and then media advocacy, communities, they are able to to listen. One of the reasons that some of these good programs with good intentions, they end up not failing, is because it's a top-down approach. How you communicate, how you engage. But once you capacitate and then you fund NGOs and CPOs, you are able to have a situation where the information is coming from, from where the communities are. There are programs, for instance, in some provinces, including Gauteng, where NGOs were they were not being funded. And the good programs that they were engaging upon, those programs, they collapsed. For instance, the program that the minister is talking about, the school health program, we know about it, and the question is to what extent where the NGOs and CPOs were involved, so that once the government has launched the program, has moved on, then there is sustainability, because NGOs are sitting with people. We don't think that people they don't want to listen. For instance, the issue of medical male circumcision, the way it was introduced, it had good intentions, but if you put it in the cultural context, it created a lot of problems if you did not involve NGOs to explain these things to people who believe in so much in their culture.
I think I'm just going to take you back a little bit, that in that clip we saw kids having recreation. One of the missing links is keeping our kids active, keeping them occupied. Instead of, for me, the strategy of putting condoms in schools, it's like saying, because drugs are accessible and they're accessible far, let's bring them closer to our kids. That's my analysis of it. Rather empower these kids with skills, give them information so that they make informed decisions and choices, instead of further perpetuating a challenge of children being sexually active at a young age. Teach them about how their bodies are formed. Teach them of the dangers of engaging sexually prematurely, because that empowers them, instead of just saying, because we have a problem, let's further, fuel the problem.
But is it
with
either or, though? Is it either or, though?
The problem is, what Griselda is saying, that's where the problem is. If you look at the school health program comprehensively, it does exactly what she's saying. That is the plan. It does exactly what she's saying. That's why even before the launch, we call all the school governing bodies, as Nkulelek is proposing, all the teachers' unions. We sat with them for 3 hours, went through this program, which, by the way, has been in the making for 2 years, with many NGOs participating. Now, what we are saying, Griselda, is not that we're going to, as some of the media unfortunately reported, the impression that we'll go to school and say, no, we have lost the battle, let's give you condoms and line the kids. That's not what we're saying.
It's unfortunate, Minister, when some of the officials would also come on air and confirm this, that yes, we're providing condoms because we have a problem. And none of them given platforms speak the way you are now, saying that it's comprehensive.
Because I called all the media people to Cullinan when the president was launching, for them to see for themselves. Some of them just choose Griselda. I even asked 2 journalists why they are obsessed with condoms, because they can see the centrality of this thing is not condoms. What we're saying is that we're going to put nurses there, and some of them are mothers who are retired nurses who have seen it all, who screen these kids, go through this program one by one. The other will be a lesson in the classroom, but the other is personal. Some of them have got problems at home. They don't even have mothers. Here is the nurse who sits and listens to them. And we are saying, if during that process you find somebody who needs help, you can't withhold it and say this person is young. What if this person tells you, look, I'm sexually active and I'm 14, and you know this child is going to be in danger, and she says, can you help me with condoms? Some of them actually do. What do? Do you say you are still very young? I give an example of a young girl when I was still practicing, who came to my practice crying almost in tears, asking me to do an abortion. And that time it was illegal. And it was almost as if her life has come to an end. And I asked her, if you were so serious about not falling pregnant, why didn't you use contraception? She said, I went to a family planning clinic. The nurses asked me to go and call my mother. Well. She said, the nurses said, no, you are still too young for contraception. Go and call your mother. And you know what she did? She didn't go to the mother, she went to the boyfriend. That's why she ended up being pregnant.
And depending on the boyfriend, how old the boyfriend is. Because some of them, condoms don't even fit because they're not fully developed. But they do have a sperm that will make a baby.
Should the nurses have sent her to her mother? And
no,
I asked people
Minister,
a question. I asked people a question in practice. Which one of us here, adults, when we went to have sex for the first time, which one of us went to tell the mother, that I'm sexually active.
I think this goes back to the point that Nkululeko made about the importance of engaging and getting civil society to unpack a program and educate and empower, as opposed to just putting it out there. And journalists, yes, would interpret based on their understanding of what you say.
We explain to them, Griselda, and I know because you are within the media, well, don't feel under attack. But I want to say, let's help each other, because precisely that, when we arrive at school, we don't just arrive and say, here we are unpacking. We agree with the school governing body that will call a parents' meeting and say, here is a problem. Do you know that school in Richards Bay where
17 kids are pregnant?
No, 60 in 1 year.
So
and
there's another one
was
with 60
them,
kids.
Yes. Yeah, it was 60 because they said we must give condoms. That was the teachers' union and parents. People who didn't know were judging them. And they said, what we do? 60%, 60 kids per annum were falling pregnant. Then we had a meeting and everybody agreed. And after giving condoms, what happened? The pregnancy rate fell by half.
Okay, I want all of you to hold your thoughts right there. We're going to take a quick break. Take some time. After the break, we'll take some of your Facebook questions and comments. Don't go away. Welcome back. This is a Sunday Live. Well, going through some of the messages on our Facebook page, Mandla Dlali says the fact that young people are so consume alcohol hinders the progress towards realizing an HIV-free nation. Till then, we will forever be fighting. Silo, Voice of Reason, says, I think the main problem with this disease is not its viciousness, but the stigma that came with it. Yeah. And then we also have, I'll read some of them, but I want us to go back. We don't have much time to basically talk about where to from now. Where do we go from here? If there's 1, 2, 3 messages that people should be taking out of this discussion for each one of us to play their role in dealing with this pandemic, what for you, Griselda?
Is that for me? Now, we have to just go back and re-look at what we're talking about. We're talking about a virus that affects human beings, one. It's called human immune deficiency virus. We need to re-look at our messaging and our areas of focus. One of the things that you asked, Minister, is the priority to which civil sector and all these sectors that are invited, the priority that's given to that kind of body. Because even within those sectors, my worry is that our approach is just so Eurocentric. It's like we mimic European countries on how Africa should be responding to HIV, and that's just unfortunate. You look at even our medical treatment interventions, there's so much funding that goes to researching antiretrovirals. Where's the funding in researching herbs that are in Africa? For the past 30 years that we've known HIV, there's always been discussions about what can be done by Africans. And to date, we're still discussing. To date, there's still research. How far has that research gone? What if Africa could come up with a solution that would come up right here from home? You go to India, you have Indian herbs, you go to China, there's Chinese teas, and those are part of health and well-being. But in South Africa, you talk anything that has to do with herbs, you are a dissident, that's quackery, and we need to really go beyond that and start realizing that this is a human immune deficiency causing virus. How well are we informed about an immune system, and how much are we educating people about an immune system, and move away from sexualizing the condition. We've done too much sex education, and badly so. We need to get to a point where we start focusing on the real issues that affect people. As an HIV positive person, I can't buy a house more than $1 million because I don't have access to life insurance. And those are the debates that are missing in this conversation. As a 30-year-old, if I was born with HIV, what is the message to me? How do I live positively? And the list goes on and on. It's just a pity that you don't have enough time.
Just 3 issues, The first one is that we've got a national strategic plan that is comprehensive. It talks about biomedical intervention and social interventions. Government is doing quite well with the biomedical intervention, but the social intervention, I think we are doing quite badly. And that then perpetuates the problem. Now, the issues of poverty the issues of food security, I would like the minister to commit himself to say they are going to commission a research on the levels of people that are defaulting from taking treatment because they don't have access to nutrition. That, for me, that is another an area that is going to make us to win the fight. But also the issue of involvement of men in the fight against HIV and AIDS. I think I agree with the minister. And then thirdly and lastly is the issue of building capacity and financing local non-governmental organizations.
Minister, your closing comments?
Yes, just before we close.
We don't have much time.
Yes. Okay, fine. I was just saying we lost an MEC in the Free State through a car accident. I just want, yes, very sad, to send condolences to the family and the government of the Free State. The issue that Nkuleleko is mentioning, we don't need any research, absolutely. We know the social determinants of health. It's socio-economic. The World Organization had a conference in Brazil, which I attended, on social determinants of health. We know them. The question that is left is what to do. But no research is needed. We know, because HIV/AIDS is a socio-economic condition. It flourishes in the informal settlements where people are unemployed, where we are poor, you know. In fact, it's not only HIV/AIDS, it's only that because it is much worse. But most of infections are socio-economic, and without dealing with social determinants of health, we will not be able to reverse the tide. And but to do that, you need mass mobilization. For instance, Kisela, for us to turn the banks around and say, you have got the right to have that insurance you're talking about. Yes, it can't be health only. We can move society to move and make these people change so that they accept this as just any other chronic illness.
Minister, I'm afraid that's where we're going to have to leave it. Griselda Nkululeko, Minister, thank you very much for coming. This debate, of course, continues.
We need more time.
Sunday Love. That's where, unfortunately, we're going to leave it for tonight. Please do remember to play it safe. Aridlale safe for 0 new HIV and TB infections. Join us again next week for a definitive guide to the people, the issues, and the implications for you of the ANC's Mangaung conference. Until then, play it safe.